Hi, welcome to yet another episode of Project Analysis series. Today we'll be diving deep into Penrith that is located along Margaret Drive. If you don't already know, this is where a lot of the expensive condos and HDBs are in this area, as well as they are highly profitable as well, such as we have Sterling, Queenstown Commonwealth Towers, and also we have Dawson HDB for the 3-room crossing 900k mark, and for the 4-room that is around the 1.2-1.3 million range, and the 5-room about 1.6 to 1.7 million. But does that mean Penrith is a sure win? We'll be covering all of that in today's video. So first things first, to give you a rundown of how today's video will go, firstly we'll touch on the project info, the location map, the site plan, unit distribution chart as well as unit mix. Then we'll be diving into a checklist that I've done specially for you. This will cover how to spot profitable projects. Of course, whether you are just looking at Penrith or you are considering other developments, this checklist is something that you can use for others as well. But that being said, there are check boxes for you to tick off, but that doesn't mean that the moment you don't check off all, there is a die project. If you're able to tick 2 or 3 out of 4 boxes, then it could be a decent or project that is worth considering. But however, if you are unable to tick any of the boxes or you are only be able to tick one, then that is something to be looked into lah. Then of course we'll dive into our usual layout analysis as well. So first things first, the project information. It is a joint venture by 𝐒𝐿𝐴 and Hong Leong. This will be completed somewhere around estimated 2029, having total of 462 units across 2 towers, which are quite high. They are a total of 40 stories tall. So one thing to note is that the site area is saying not too big but also not too small either. It's 9,500 square meters, which if you compare to other developments such as like Normanton Park, of course that is more than 6 times of what Penrith is. Normanton Park is the land size itself is over 60,000 square meters. Of course, when you compare the facilities and the landscaping and how you feel when you walk into the project, it's gonna be vastly different. Of course, we can't expect the same for Penrith given the land size, but I would say it is still quite decent. Then this is just some artist impression for you to have an eye of how the project may look like, the facilities, etc. Then location map. As mentioned earlier, we are situated in a residential area, actually quite a mature estate because we are in the city fringe. The location is great. You have a lot of residential around as well. In terms of amenities, you are very well taken care of also. So Queenstown MRT, you don't just have the expensive condo and HDBs around. Actually down the stretch to the left side, you also have 𝐒𝐿𝐴 area, Dover area that is very expensive as well. Then of course on the right side you have Red Hill and Tiong Bahru, which this area I would say is really quite sought after. Through COVID, where the demand of immediate housing has increased, right, the resale price of this area has increased tremendously too. So then we are walking distance to Queenstown MRT. I think you have heard that again and again, but one thing to note is that it is a fully sheltered walkway to the MRT. So if you're looking for something that is within walking distance and yet fully sheltered, then this will definitely be the newest kid in the block, because there will be no more GLS that is in this close proximity. Of course there will be, but those will be much further down already. Then this is to have a feel of exactly where we're located at. So on the left you have Queenstown Primary School. Then on the right you have your HDB Skyview at Dawson. Then of course on the other sides you have Sky Oasis, you have Sky Residences, etc. So looking at this, right, Penrith, it is going to be 40 stories tall, and from this you really can tell that Penrith looks a bit small. Because when you compare the school size, we compare to the BTO classes, it is on the smaller side. The one I don't deny lah. But then the question is, among all these HDBs and condos in this area, can you exactly see Penrith or not? Because if Penrith being 40 stories tall, the BTO beside is all 47, 40 plus stories, even the HDB that's right opposite is about 8 to 24 stories tall, right? Then the question is, can you notice Penrith, or will it just look like an ordinary building, or will it look too similar even to the HDB that is being beside, then of course that I'll cover in the later part of my video regarding land size and visibility. Does that affect your profit or not? Then just to give you a little bit of view, on the north of Penrith, of course, you have the unobstructed view. But that being said, you are facing the Rainbow Centre, you are facing the church. But beyond that, right, actually it is zone residential, but it's subject to detailed planning. And also at the same time, when I look at the draft master plan 2025, there is going to be a new road along here, thereby creating a cul-de-sac over here, which then my question is, when that actually happens, or if it will really happen lah, because sometimes when it's in the master plan, it may or may not happen with immediate effect. Who knows, it could happen in 5 years, who knows, it could happen in 10 years, or who knows, the plans could change entirely also. So then my question is, with a cul-de-sac over here and with the traffic being diverted away, right, whether that will further affect the visibility of Penrith. That one only time will tell lah. Then this is the north of Penrith unobstructed view. Then the question is, when will this future residential eventually come up, right? Will it come up in 5 years, 10 years? We really wouldn't know. But to make you a little bit more assured to continue having this view that you paid for, right, I would say maybe go for level 30 and above. That would be a lot safer. But if you don't mind playing with that risk that opposite it is zone residential subject to detailed planning, then by all means, depending on your affordability. Then we move on to the south view. So one thing to note is that here is 8-story tall, here is 24, then here is 18. So in order for you to have a good clearance, it would probably be about 26 floor and above, I would say. But however, if you choose a stack that is just facing the 8th floor, then perhaps don't mind a lower floor. But that being said, if you are looking for own stay and you are eyeing for the bigger unit types such as the 3 and the 4 bedrooms, then view is probably a bit more of a winning factor, especially in this area. But if you tell me you're buying into a 2-bedroom for investment, then perhaps view is not the most important. But if you want a superb view, then of course level 30 and above lah. But that being said, you are in Queenstown where it's a lot of residential, so don't expect like a unblocked lander or like a unblocked greenery view from here lah. To the site plan. So as mentioned, Penrith is split across 2 towers. Essentially the 2 blocks will be facing each other, or they'll be facing outside, right? I think the developer has placed quite a bit of thought into this, because if they put the units side by side not facing each other, that would mean the facing would be definitely compromised in terms of direction, because then the units would be direct east or direct west, which you know in the resale market that is not what something buyers look out for. So I guess this is quite a good site for the developers. And also they place the blocks far apart such that the gap in between is 60 meters. But I would say one thing that I am not a fan of, because you see the entrance is from Margaret Drive, right? I think something that you need to think about is that your guardhouse is over here. You have a pedestrian side gate over here, and your early childhood center is over here. So here, you'll be like, Yvette, what's your point, right? So my concern is the purpose of this side gate here, because you have your car entrance with such a wide opening, right? Will it become just another project like View at Kismis? If you look on TikTok, right, there's this resident who created a TikTok account for View at Kismis talking about the development shortfalls, about how the side gate is useless because the guardhouse is a side. When I look at this side plan, it kind of reminds me of that lah. If you want to take a look at the video, because the side gate and also the car entrance is tucked away from the guardhouse, my concern is really on the security of this place, because actually people don't just have to tailgate through the pedestrian side gate, they can just walk in alongside the cars into the development. Your cars turn in, right, you turn right to the guardhouse, then your drop-off point is here before you go into the car park, right? But if you turn left, it's actually the early childhood. They do have open air car park as well as a drop-off point. So with these two being integrated, right, I'm just not sure about how the security, about how safe it will be. But that being said, one thing to note is also that the entrance for Penrith is a bit on the narrow side. Because the developers space the blocks so far apart, right, then the entrance is only left this small area. But whereas if they were to put the two blocks a bit nearer, then would that have made the entrance a bit more grand? Because I think entering into a development, the first impression always counts, and the first impression is typically how does it feel when driving in, how does it feel when walking into a development. I think that is something that buyers look out for a lot, and for this being a narrow entrance, will that affect the feel-good feeling of buyers? Then that is something to think about lah. Then also distribution chart, the entire land it is elevated, so even though the units start on the second floor, it kind of feels like you are starting on the fifth floor lah. Then also another thing I forgot to mention, in the middle, right, this is actually the facilities. That there are facilities on the level 1, there are facilities on the second floor as well, where the pool is, where the clubhouse is as well. One thing to note is that for residents, when they exit from their block, they have to come down to level 1. They have to take a separate tap in to level 2 where the main facilities are, which I think not the most ideal, but we have to see the actual product when it is being built, how the landscaping is, how the security is. Because to be honest, at the showroom, right, there are a few things that you cannot really tell, such as the car park entrance, whether is it narrow, whether is it steep. You also can't see the corridor space as well, how wide, how skinny the corridor is that is leading to your unit, as well as how the tap in and tap out access card. Because all these things you cannot visualize until the thing is being built, which is something that you have to overcome, especially when you're buying into a new launch project that is you're buying off paper, right? Then of course there are a lot of other considerations that you have to look into, but yet there are other considerations that you have to close one eye also. So then we move on to the unit mix. There are no 1-bedroom units here. There are 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, and you see over here the 2 bedrooms only stand at 33%, which I think is a good percentage. What that means is that the developers have actually placed quite a significant percentage on the 3 and the 4 bedroom types. Then one layout that I'm extremely excited for is actually the 4-bedroom 1281 square feet, because this features a landscape living and dining. There is a master bedroom ensuite, right? There are actually 2 common bathrooms that are being shared, and not just the WC. So it's really like a 4-bed 3-bath, excluding the WC. So that is something exciting to note, because how did they manage to create such a wide living and dining and yet have all these features in just a 1281 square feet? Oh yes, also for Penrith there is priority booking. Whether you are an ex-owner, you purchased directly from the developer before, or you are an existing owner, do share with me more regarding the priority and loyalty program. Because I would say when you are entering through priority, there are also things to look out for. Because when you're in priority queue, right, you're actually not given the full price list. Basically, you stand in queue, you have a piece of paper, you have to write down exactly for 5 units, right, and ask for the respective prices. And then each time, right, you can only ask for that 5 units. So you are given very limited time and very limited resources to pick the right unit. So in that case, right, strategizing which facing, which floor level, and really realizing where is the premium, right, and that will allow you to choose the right unit. But of course, 讲得容易做得难啦. And then of course you have to go with the right agent to help you to strategize all this if you're going for priority booking. Then here comes the exciting part, which is how to spot profitable projects. The first point I have here is land size. Does it really mean that the bigger the land, the higher the profit? Does it really mean that land, like big land 真的包赚吗? Here we have an example of Claiborne that is standing at 16,000 square meters versus Cambridge Hill at 26,000 square meters. Here you can see the land size is extremely different. One of them is actually 1.5 times in terms of land size to the other, but yet they are relatively in the same in the west, central west area, just across one expressway. Why I want to bring this example is because they were launched around the same time, and yet they are not too far apart, but here we can see a land size is extremely different. So we see 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿's highest profit standing at 929,000 versus Kent Ridge Hill highest profit is 600,000. Bear in mind that Kent Ridge Hill, right, it does consist of strata landed, so who knows, maybe this 600,000 could be that one-off case, or it could be just that one strata landed, because when you look at the average, it's only 180,000. What that means is that owners there are profit as low as 35,000 and thereby averaging about 180,000. Whereas for 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿, right, highest profit over 900,000, the average being 317,000. What that means is that for the 2 bedrooms or even the 3 bedrooms there, they are averaging about 200,000-300,000 one. And also when I look at the standard 4 and 5 bedrooms, they are generally profiting about 800-900,000. So looking at this study, why is it that 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿, being a small land, actually profited so much more than the big land? Then that brings us to our second point, which is visibility. When we look at where Kent Ridge Hill is, right, it is a low-rise project, just about 5 stories tall. But when we zoom into the location, what you'll notice is that it's actually hidden, quite hidden in a way, whereby if you don't stay here, you don't come by this South Buona Vista Road, right, you essentially may not know of this project. Or if you don't have someone living there, you don't have someone recommending you this condo, pretty much you won't even hear about it because it is really quite hidden, and all around you is all landed. There's no offices, there's no like industrial building either, so pretty much only people who live here will know . So that being said, that affects the visibility a lot. Whereas for 𝐒𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿, it being a high-rise project, every day, whether you're driving along Clementi Avenue 1 or you're just coming by the expressway through the E, right, a lot of times, no matter where you're coming from, whether you're coming from Jurong, whether you're coming from Queenstown, Clementi, every day that you're driving along this expressway, you would notice this project. And what that means is that you may not know what that building is, but you definitely see it because it's so outstanding, right, among the condos, among the buildings over there. Or when the time comes when you're looking for a condo, you'll be like, what's that condo that I drove past? What's that condo that looks so nice on the exterior? That will be something that you'll be pondering upon, and not just for you, but for also future buyers, because your project is known and people know about you. And the more people know about you and they start thinking about you, can I say that potentially when they want to buy a condo, they will think about you? The chances are higher . Then that brings me back to the Queenstown area, where I compared a few projects that are in this area as well. First, we have Margaret View, which has a land size of 4,800 square meters, which is almost half of Penrith, by the way. Then for Commonwealth Towers, much bigger. Then of course you have Sterling, even bigger just because of the land size. Here we see the profit being tremendously different. Margaret View, if you're not staying in the area, you won't really notice it just because of its location and its land size, right? So you see the highest profit around 560,000, average about 300,000, which is not too bad, I would say, over the past couple of years. Then we have Commonwealth Towers and Sterling. So if you come by Queenstown, you're driving around Commonwealth area, these two projects you will definitely not miss, just because of the sheer size of the land, just because of how big the project is, you will not miss it. For Commonwealth Towers, highest profit around 1 million. Then for Sterling, don't need to say actually 1.2 million. Because when your land size is big, when your visibility is big, right, your land size is big alone, your facilities, the feeling when you walk in is definitely increased as well because of the feel good factor that we mentioned earlier, right? So if you ask me, where does Penrith stand I got a feeling in terms of land size, in terms of visibility, I would say we are somewhere in between these two. Here we got to manage our expectations a little bit. We cannot expect the kind of profit, the kind of visibility as what Sterling has, because the difference is a lot. So we gotta manage our expectations, where perhaps we will stand somewhere between Margaret View and also Commonwealth Towers. Then here you might be wondering, how about the other projects such as Queen's Peak. Why I didn't mention Queen's Peak is also because of the layout inefficiency lah. Because for 3 bedrooms, right, for the 2 common bedrooms, you can't even fit a queen size bed. You can only fit a single. Then you have odd shapes. Then you have like small bedrooms, which it's not a clear competitor lah. When I take Penrith into comparison, that's why I didn't even pull out those figures at all. Then that being said, here's the checklist that we have. First, we covered land size, we also covered visibility. Then we also touched on a reputable developer as well as good layout. So where does Penrith stand in this checklist? I would say in terms of land size, it's relatively decent. In terms of visibility, I would say decent as well. Then developer and layout, of course, we tick the boxes lah. So in a way, I will give this project a score of maybe say 2.8 to 3 out of 4, which I would say is not. It's still quite decent. Of course, if you cannot even tick any of the boxes or you only tick one, then there is something to be a bit more careful lah. 2.83, I would say still quite decent in terms of this checklist. So this checklist, right, is not. So like I mentioned earlier, this checklist you can use for other developments as well, not just for Penrith. Then you can roughly see where does your development stand. But I would say this is not a sure win also, because there are a few factors that we have to look into. Because I hear so many myths about freehold versus landed. I also hear about near MRT, you have to be like near good primary school. But is that really the case? Because there are a lot of leasehold condos that make a lot. And also there are a lot of condos that are not near MRT, not near primary school, but still profit a lot. So feel free to reach out to me if you like a detailed analysis, and here's my contact as well. Short commercial break. Now we dive back into the layout analysis for Penrith. So for the 2 bedrooms, right, the 2 bed 1 bath standing at 614 square feet, it is a conventional 2 bedroom where you have the 2 bedrooms tucked away on one side rather than a dumbbell layout. What I like about this is that your kitchenette is this L shape as well lah. Then that gives you a bit more space for your dining, and also it's not those you open your door, you straight walk in, your kitchen is like the straight line. I don't like that lah. So that being said, for 2 bedrooms, because there's only 2 blocks, right? So the corner areas are the bigger blocks. So in the middle, you only have your 2 bedrooms. So do not expect any windows in your kitchen, windows in your toilet. You won't find that in your 2 bedroom. Then when I compare to the next hit in the block, right, which is Sterling Residences. So Sterling's 2 bed 1 bath, it stands at 635 square feet. And the highest transacted price is at 1.58 million. If I were to take Sterling and compare it to today's context of harmonized, right, where we don't take into the aircon ledge, the measurement of the walls is different as well. Sterling 635 square feet minus 7%, that will equate to 591 square feet. Then if I take the highest transacted price divided by 591 square feet, that will mean that Sterling in harmonized context, it will be 2673 per square foot. So from here, then we can roughly determine a safe entry price for Penrith. Because when we look at the price gap, right, for resale versus new launch, of course, this example is pre-COVID. COVID has changed everything in today's market. Why is that so? Because the demand for resale has been driven up so high, because people are looking for immediate stay, people cannot wait to move in, people don't want to rent, don't want to wait, right? Then that is the only market that they can look for. And that is why we see a lot of new launches, right, that are being priced so close to resale compared to back in those days. So pre-COVID, here you can see Amber Park versus the nearby resale, right, there is a gap of 38%. Also taking into account, there's another project in Buangkok area. When we look at Jewel at Buangkok versus Sengkang Grand, right, there is also a 30% gap. But of course, bear in mind, Sengkang Grand didn't make that much. If you want to know why, call me. Whereas for Clavon and the Clement Canopy, right, you see that the new launch versus resale, the gap is around 9%. So in today's context, right, what I will usually do is, so long as the resale versus new perhaps have a 10% gap, then it will be relatively safe. But when I bring it back into Penrith's context, right, if I take 2673 plus 10%, that would mean 2940. If you ask me, that would be a crazy price segment to enter at Penrith. So we will not take this per square foot into comparison. I will just take sterling to this resale non-harmonized per square foot as a safe entry guide. So the developer has given an indicative that the 2-bed 1-bath will be starting from 1.495 million, and that will translate to 2437 per square foot. So if you ask me, very safe, it will definitely be around the 2425 per square foot range. Then 10% higher, that will place us at 2728. Then you ask me, when do we not enter, especially if you are buying for investment, then that will be about the 293,000 mark. That would mean not safe lah. But bear in mind, if you enter at 24 plus per square foot, you are entering into sterling's prices, which is a resale by the way, and also non-harmonized, and that will give you an advantage in terms of price quantum as well. Then we move on to the 2-bed 2-bath, which is the 678 square feet. This one is the dumbbell layout lah. Of course, you have your kitchen tucked away on this corner, but I would say kitchen without window you cannot enclose one lah. So far, I've been to so many resale houses, right? So far, I've never seen the owner build glass door on this side. So enclosable? I don't think so, but to each his own, okay? So again, we take that into comparison with sterling 678 square feet, highest transacted at 1.818 million. Doing the same math, that would mean that sterling, if it were to be harmonized, it will be 2886 per square foot. Plus 10% too much. So it's okay, we just take sterling's resale non-harmonized per square foot as a comparison. So developer has given an indicative of starting from 1.655 million, which is about the 24 per square foot range. So I would say anything in between 24 to 26, right? That will be very safe. Then of course anything higher, try not to enter at that price point lah. Then you may ask, between the 2-bed 1-bath and the 2-bed 2-bath, what's the difference and how is the ROI like, right? When we compare to sterling's 2-bed 1-bath and the 2-bath, and we look at the highest profit, and more importantly, not just the profit, we look at the ROI, because it's the return on investment, how much you put in and how much you get back, right? We realize that the 2-bed 2-bath, actually the ROI is a bit higher. If you ask me for my take for the 2-bedroom, right, I'll definitely go for the 2-bed 2-bath because of this data that is being shown. Then we move on to the 3-bedroom layout. This one I'm extremely excited about because when I look at the 3-bedroom compared, right, there are two sizes, the 786 square feet and the 850 square feet, right? And now in today's context, you keep hearing 786, 786. It's becoming the norm of like 3-bedroom units really. First we saw it at River Green, then after we saw it at Springleaf Residences, and then now here. But among all the developments that has this 786 square feet that is harmonized, right, I like Penrith 786 the most. Why is that so? Is because when you walk in, your kitchen has a window over here, which means it can be fully enclosed. Your bathroom has windows as well, and more importantly, right, your 3 bedrooms are all on one side. What that means is that they didn't try to make the corridor space smaller to save on that square feet, and then they have to tuck away the 3rd bedroom on the other side, thereby compromising on the view. But this one, you have your 3 bedrooms on one side, which I think is really quite nice. And for this 786, you basically have everything that you need for a 3-bedroom compact. So I would say if you have the budget for a 2-bed 2-bath, and perhaps you can stretch a little bit more to a 3-bedroom compact, this 78 square feet, I would say definitely go for this one over the 2-bedroom if you can. Then we have the 850 square feet, right? You may be asking me, what is the difference? Here I show you. So you see the 850 square feet, right? Your foyer orientation is a bit different. You do have a longer living and dining. You also have a bit bigger kitchen as well as a wider master room. So it really depends on your ballot number as well as the unit availability, because what you want to buy may not even be available, right? If you ask me, comparing this to, I might just go for the 786 square feet because your living and dining, it is still the same width at around 2.8 meters. It's just the length that is a bit different. Your foyer is compromised. Yes, your kitchen is a bit smaller, but if you ask me, do we need a wider master room? I don't think so. Given all these differences, I will go for the 786 square feet because if you ask me, right, for a 3-bedroom compact that is quite similar, to pay for 160, 180,000 more for 850, but it also depends on luck and availability also lah. Then again, using the formula that we use for Sterling, of course Sterling's smaller 3-bedroom is a bit on the bigger side at 883 square feet. If it were to be harmonized, the per square foot would be about 2680. Then what is the safe entry price for Penrith? So developer given an indicative starting from 1.973 million at 2511 per square foot. Do take note now, all the starting from prices is that one and only cheapest unit. Most of the time it's on the lowest floor, it's on the less premium facing. That being said, right, the chances of the 3-bedroom compact crossing the 2 million mark is very high. It may even go up to 2.1 to even 2.2 million or even higher. So the safe entry price for a 3-bedroom compact, I would say around 2005 per square foot, even up to 2007, I think it's still quite okay. But anything higher across the 2.9 to a 3,000 mark, I think it's a bit too much lah. Then we move on to a 3-bedroom premium for the 936 square feet as well as the 1066 square feet. Looking at the floor plan like that, you won't be able to see the difference one. So I do for you. Over here, you see there are a lot of difference that are not seen on the naked eye. Firstly, your foyer orientation, but that being aside, right, you do have your living, dining, kitchen hall all wider, your common bedroom also wider, your master bedroom also with a walk-in wardrobe, right? I would say if you can go for the 1066 square feet, right, because a 3.6 meter versus a 2.8 meters in terms of living room width, right, I think that's quite a big difference because that affects the feeling when you go in and all that, and also with your kitchen space. But that being said, if you ask me among all the 3 bedrooms and also the 4 bedrooms, right, I would say each and every size and layout will have its group of buyers. Why I say that is because especially for Queenstown, right, bearing in mind that a lot of the buyers are actually coming from the 3 and the 4-room HDB upgraders, right? 3-room crossing the 900k mark, of course they have profited a lot, but that being said, they may also have their budget constraint. They may not be able to go for the 3 premium, they may not go for the 4-bedroom, whereas for the 4-room, 5-room, they may be looking at something like this, or even be able to upgrade to a 4-bedroom premium. I would say each buyers would definitely have their own needs in terms of space and also have their own needs in terms of budget as well. I would say actually every bedroom type will have its target group. Like, you don't have to think about like, oh, which one can make the most money and all that. Again, when we look at the comparison in terms of sterling prices, if it were to be harmonized, because then what you notice is that the 3-bedroom transacted per square foot is much higher than the 2-bedroom. When I look at the ROI for sterling between the 3-bedroom compact and the premium, right, the ROI is actually very similar, which links back to my point earlier regarding the target audience for your bedroom type and whether which price point is being safe to enter. I would say still around the 2526 per square foot range up to about 28, but I would think anything between 29 to 3000 would be very high, because if you were to enter at 3000, right, then my question is how much do you potentially want to exit at? You definitely want to exit at maybe say 31 or even 33 per square foot, right? But my question is, in this area, has that price point been proven? Has that price point been transacted as well? The answer is no. If you're hoping to buy in at this price point and to sell at this price point, right, then my concern is that you are buying into hope. And when you're buying into hope, can I say that, wow, I hope that my price will reach there, I hope, I dream about it. All these are all speculation, all these are like what I call like dreaming, or it essentially translates to risk, which when you buy into this price point when it's not transacted in this area, when you take the resale and all that, you turn it to harmonize, it's nowhere close, right? You're just hoping for this price tag to be accepted in a few years time by the future buyers. Then there comes its risk on its own. Unless you're buying for own stay, right, you want that particular space, you want that particular facing because it feels good, right? Of course, by all means. But I would say every time my buyers come in and tell me that they're buying this for their forever home, then I will start to ask them a bit more. Have you ever thought about like when plans change, what if instead of having no kids, you suddenly want 1 or 2? Can your space accommodate your needs or not? Because most of the time I see a lot of buyers, they are usually dead set on something, right? But after that plans change in 5 years, 10 years, and then they see themselves stuck. I would say even if you're buying this with a forever home in mind, right, it's also important to think about your exit strategy. How much can you potentially sell for, and who are the future buyers who may be looking at your unit as well. So then we move on to the 4-bedroom layouts. There are only 2. Here you have the 1173 square feet, 76 units, and also the 1281 square feet. If you look at this floor plan side by side without any dimensions and without the highlighting of the color, right, you would think like, oh, just the 1281, just a bit living space lor, just like that. But however, right, I do this for you. Not only you have a landscape living and dining area, you also have a bigger kitchen as well as more cabinet space, but more importantly, you have an additional third common bathroom and also a junior master, because here you see the bathroom, your master bath is here and your common bath, whereas for the 1281 square feet, right, your master bath, your bath, junior master as well, which I feel for this size 1281 and 1173, for just 100+ square feet difference, you have this much additional stuff, which makes it a lot more attractive, especially given the limited supply of the 4 bedrooms in this area. I think you definitely stand an advantage, because for this 100+ square feet, right, you're only looking at a price difference of about 280,000-290,000, which I feel it is still a very good price point. Because when I look at other projects such as like Lentor Central, that also has this similar thing going on. For portrait living at 1184 square feet, the landscape living is a lot bigger at 1399 square feet, thereby translating into a price difference of over 500,000. Whereas in Penrith, you can get all of this at just 200,000, 300,000. I do think it's something worth upgrading for. Because when you look at the available 4-bedroom listings in this area, for example, you look at Commonwealth Towers, you look at Sterling, and you look at how much profits they are spending on and what price tag they are commanding at, I definitely think Penrith's 4-bedroom, especially the 1281 square feet, is worth fighting for. But that being said, there is only one stack of the 1281 square feet, so you really gotta run. Whereas for 1173 square feet, at least you got 2 stacks. That brings me to the end of my Penrith analysis video. I hope this gives you a lot more insights, and do not forget to like, share and subscribe. Whether you are looking at Penrith, you are looking at Zion Grand, or even Faber Residences, Sky at Holland, The Sand, right, I'll be doing more project analysis videos. Your like and your subscribe would really mean the world to me as I create more content just for you. But that being said, given that the coming quarter is going to be an exciting one, next year will be a different price tag already. Especially when you look at, for example, for Bayshore, or you even look at Lorong Chuan area, you realize that Bayshore, right, given that it's going to be a OCR outskirts, right, and looking at the price point that they bought in at, potentially what we will expect the developers potentially could be selling is actually 27 to 28 per square foot, thereby translating to over 3,000 per square foot easily. But of course, it's not something new because Ori has already transacted past 3,000 per square foot, right? But Bayshore, for an outskirt project to be translating at this price point, and not forgetting other projects such as also another GLS that is being sold right next to Lakeside MRT, also going to be around the 26-27 per square foot range. That makes the projects in this quarter relatively cheap. But that being said, buying in cheap may not equate you to selling higher in the future. There's a lot of details that you do have to look out for, not just the checklist that I've shared earlier, a lot of facts, a lot of data, a lot of analysis and comparison that needs to be done in order to make your property a right choice. Feel free to contact me and I'll be more than happy to share it with you. See you on my next episode.